By April 2026, a massive U.S.-Israeli strike campaign and fierce Iranian retaliation pushed the global economy to the edge. And the choke point was here, the Strait of Hormuz, completely blockaded by maritime destruction. Coming out of Washington, the rhetoric offered zero room for compromise. The White House was setting strict public deadlines, threatening to permanently obliterate Iranian civilization if Tehran didn't immediately surrender. But away from the podiums, the numbers were telling a different story. Crude oil had quickly surged past $100 a barrel, and everyday consumers were staring down the barrel of a global recession. The world was looking directly into an economic abyss. It became a high-stakes waiting game to see which massive military power would be forced to blink first. Then, on April 8th, a temporary ceasefire was signed. Pakistan had emerged as the broker, bypassing the United Nations and the European Union entirely. For decades, Islamabad has relied on massive IMF debt bailouts to stay afloat. They've navigated constant domestic volatility and had previously been labeled by the U.S. as the ally from hell. Having them orchestrate peace between two entrenched adversaries seemed entirely improbable. This diagram shows exactly how this diplomatic coordination works, a concept called delegated diplomacy. When two massive superpowers cannot negotiate directly without losing face, they route their communication through a much smaller, vulnerable third-party state. Islamabad functioned as a highly necessary messenger, a deniable off-ramp for global powers who could no longer afford the cost of the war. While the White House framed the truce as a favor to Islamabad, pressure came from within. Economic panic and an unexpectedly resilient Iranian defense forced Washington to initiate the backdoor channel. The White House bypassed normal diplomatic routes entirely. Instead, they leaned directly on Pakistan's military leadership, primarily Army Chief Asim Munir, to forge a truce. Islamabad had its own urgent reasons to accept the job. Their fragile economy runs almost entirely on Middle Eastern oil and gas imports. A prolonged blockade in the Gulf meant total domestic collapse. Even worse, Pakistan had recently signed a major defense pact with Saudi Arabia. If Riyadh got pulled into the conflict, Islamabad was legally bound to join them in a direct military confrontation with Iran. Neither Washington nor Islamabad acted out of a noble desire for peace. Both were driven by immediate, terrifying self-preservation. Getting Iran to the table proved incredibly difficult. Tehran inherently distrusted American promises. They also doubted Pakistan's neutrality, especially regarding strict international sanctions and their own nuclear program. The negotiations were completely deadlocked until a hidden third actor stepped in to force the issue: Beijing. China was dealing with its own severe vulnerabilities. They desperately needed Gulf energy flows to resume to fuel their industrial engine. But they refused to risk a direct diplomatic failure or expose themselves to any U.S. retaliation if the talks collapsed. This flowchart reveals the actual ceasefire architecture. The U.S. pushes Pakistan, Pakistan pushes China, and China uses its economic leverage to strong-arm Iran. To get Iranian officials to board a plane, China acted as their ultimate safety guarantor against assassination during travel. What the world saw was an agreement brokered in Islamabad, but the reality was a mandate orchestrated by Beijing using Pakistan merely as a diplomatic buffer. In the immediate aftermath of the ceasefire, the reality on the ground is messy. Almost the second the ink dried on the truce, fighting instantly resumed in Lebanon. Over in Washington, the paranoia runs deep. U.S. lawmakers are already aggressively questioning the deal, with some suspecting that Pakistan used its own air bases to hide Iranian military assets from American strikes. Structurally, the treaty solved almost nothing. The Strait of Hormuz remains practically impassable due to unmapped sea mines, and zero long-term security issues between the two nations were actually resolved. The ceasefire functioned as a temporary pressure release valve to calm terrified global markets. As a durable peace solution, it failed to address the underlying drivers of the war. Global diplomacy is becoming increasingly fragmented and transactional. Modern superpowers routinely spark conflicts they cannot finish directly, quickly finding themselves paralyzed by the complex, interlocking economic supply chains that sustain them. When that happens, the burden shifts. Vulnerable middle powers must now absorb the diplomatic risks and clean up the messes created by empires. The 21st century's most critical geopolitical work is now done by these desperate messengers, the middle powers doing the legwork of global survival, while the empires stand back.